Important topic. Just let me kind of tell you where I'm coming from. Like Senator Durbin, I've been working on this for a very long time. The flow has changed. Used to be a lot of adults, mostly single males, trying to evade capture to come into the country to work. Family members were brought, but not in the numbers that they are today. Most of illegal immigration is economically driven. Most people come here to try to get work where they can't find it home. America's a better place to live in terms of security. I understand that. But what's happened now is that you're having large numbers of families with small children coming, trying to get caught. They're not evading capture. They're going into the first Border Patrol agent they can find and say, here we are. We want to claim asylum. Under our law, you're entitled to a hearing. Under the Flores decision, we can only hold a minor for 20 days. And that's that's not enough time to adjudicate the claim. So then if you don't want to separate families, what do? If you don't want to have family detention centers, what we're doing is letting people go. Word is out on the street in Central America that if you make it to the United States, try to get caught, don't evade capture, claim asylum, and your chances of being deported are very, very low. I'm trying to do something about that. And what I'm offering to my Democratic colleagues is let's do something about why they leave to begin with. Cutting off the aid was a decision the administration made. And again, if you don't invest in Central America, this never ends, but you can't buy your way out of this. So what I'm trying to do, Senator Durbin, is change our laws for a period of time to tell people, don't take this journey, don't risk your own lives, don't risk your children's lives, don't come to America in such large numbers. You can apply for asylum in your home country or a refugee center in Mexico that meets international standards to have a break from the numbers that are overwhelming our border. In return, invest heavily, smartly into Central America so that they will not be required to leave to begin with, or there'll be some hope to stay. I don't know what else to do. I'll be glad to have a hearing about the effect on children. I just want to know what the journey's like, not just what it's like to get here. The point is, I am trying to find a way to fix this problem, and I've come to conclude the following. If you don't change our asylum laws, you never fix this. There's not enough of money you can invest in Central America to make it better than the United States. And as long as people believe they get into the United States, set one foot on our soil, claim asylum, they're home free, particularly if they bring a small child, they're going to take us up on that offer. And I'd like to change that narrative, and I'm willing to do things in Central America and other places in a bipartisan fashion to change that narrative. But if that narrative doesn't change, you better be appropriating $10 billion every quarter to deal with the humanitarian conditions, because we're going to have a lot of Central America coming to our border, taking up us on the offer of staying and being released. So I don't know what to do other than keep trying. I'm going to the border. I wish we could do it together, but apparently we can't. I'm going to talk to the President Saturday. I have concerns about going after people who've been here a long time, just like you do. But somebody needs to send a signal to the people coming to stop. And we're talking about deporting people, Senator Durbin, who have been through the legal process and lost. They've had their day in court, and they lost, and they didn't show up. They're hiding out in the country. And I think a reasonable place to start would be people who've just got here, so they don't get ingrained in society, and you have problems down the road. So I don't know what to tell the President. The Congress seems to be incapable of doing much. He seems to want to make a deal. Let's take him up on it. But deal to me, to my Democratic colleagues, has to be a timeout on the asylum system as it exists today for a year or two, just to get order to chaos. And I'm willing to deal with the underlying problems in a robust fashion and try to persuade the President to do that. But somebody's got to stop this flow. And I'll just end with Senator Cornyn. And I didn't take what Senator Feinstein said to be blaming our folks. I didn't. It's just a reality. I don't know how many of you have been overseas, been to the camps where the Yazidis were being housed after living under ISIS. I've seen a lot of traumatized people. I've seen a lot of traumatized children. And if it doesn't break your heart, there's something wrong with your heart. So let's try try to come together and fix this, and I'll be glad to have a hearing about the conditions.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Chairman, on July 4th, a 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit Ridgecrest, California. A day later, our Ridgecrest community experienced a 7.1 magnitude earthquake. To put that in perspective, the Northridge quake 20 years ago severely lost 60 lives and others and crippled Los Angeles was less than that. People felt this throughout Southern California, but the epicenter of these earthquakes were located on the Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake. Hundreds of aftershocks have already occurred and are still occurring. The Navy announced that due to the earthquake-related damage, China Lake was not mission capable, and the non-essential personnel had to be evacuated. This is significant because China Lake, along with neighboring installations, form a cornerstone of our national defense architect that integrates all operational domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace. The men and women who work here help test and develop the technology needed to equip our warfighters with the very best weapons and tools to ensure our military remains second to none. Now, my amendment, which I offered with Congressman Cook, was included in the en bloc package. It would authorize $100 million to help address China Lake's most immediate needs. And it requires the Department of Defense develop a plan by October 1st to assess, repair, and modernize the infrastructure and facilities at China Lake and other installations in the R-2508 airspace special use complex that was damaged by the earthquakes. The extent of this language is still being assessed, but we need to ensure that we are not only repairing this important base to address the threats facing our nation today and in the years ahead. But, Mr. Chairman, I want to be clear to my constituents in Ridgecrest and Kern County, this amendment is just an initial step in helping China Lake and the communities I represent impacted by these earthquakes to make sure they recover. Over the coming days, weeks, and months, I ask my colleagues in this chamber and the U.S. Senate to join with me to ensure Ridgecrest, China Lake, and all communities impacted by the earthquakes and natural disasters have our full support and are provided the resources they need to quickly rebuild and get back to normal. I also ask my colleagues to join me in thanking all the local first responders, the local, state, and federal emergency response officials who have worked nonstop over the past several days to ensure our constituents affected in Ridgecrest were safe, have food, water, and a place to sleep. Finally, I also want to thank the thousands of residents across our communities for their help, their actions, and their prayers for their neighbors in need. It is said that adversity does not build character, it reveals it. Earthquakes can shake our foundations, but the residents of Ridgecrest should hold their heads high. In this time of adversity, their true character has shown and is an inspiration to all of us. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Matt Gaetz, where's Matt? Where's Matt? Stand up, Matt. Boy, a great defender. He gets on television, and he's like, it doesn't stop. And he's smart, and he's good, and he loves Florida, and he loves his people, and he's a hard worker. And Matt, thank you very much. I really appreciate it very much.
Hey everybody, I'm Lara Trump coming to you from Studio 45 at Trump Tower in New York City. Since taking office, President Trump has successfully dismantled Barack Obama's radical environmental agenda. The result? New jobs and a historic new American energy renaissance. Joining me to discuss environmental and energy politics today is a veteran GOP climate and energy strategist, Mandy Gunasekara. Thank you so much, Mandy, for joining us today.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I got your name right, did I?
That was perfect. Spot on.
Well, then we can just end this interview now.
We're good.
So you have obviously worked in the environmental space for a long time. We have seen quite a change since this president took office. This president ended Barack Obama's Clean Power Plan and the war on coal. How has that really changed the landscape of jobs in this country?
In a huge way. And I think it's important to understand that the war on coal was also a war on communities in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Kentucky, and some of our great states out west. And what the president has done is he took the regulatory boot off the throat of these communities, which has unleashed the economy because a lot of our economy, there was a new statistic out this morning that coal, natural gas, and oil provide 80% of the energy that fuels this great country and our booming economy, and that's created jobs and all the growth and a restoration of optimism across the country, but especially in those communities that they were at their wits' end under the last administration.
Yeah, and it really has created a bit of an energy renaissance in the United States in the sense that from everything that I hear, we are the #1 producer of energy in the entire world, and that really has changed the landscape of things for us. We are not reliant on other countries anymore for energy. We're doing things here at home, and everybody's back to work. So it seems like across the board, a very positive thing, I would say, right?
Yes, it was very important, and one of the first things that he did coming in as president was pare back these harmful regulations, and we're reaping the benefits today and will continue to do so.
Yeah. Something else that he did shortly after taking office, this president, was pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. He has said that it was a job killer. It was one of the worst agreements signed ever. Why was this such a problem for the United States?
Well, the Paris Climate Accord was indicative of the fact that Obama was one of the worst negotiators this country has ever seen. President Trump obviously saw that, and he pulled the country out. The biggest problem, and I was in the Oval Office when we were briefing him and the rest of the senior advisors of the ultimate decision, but the president always asked, how is this going to impact jobs?
Right.
And there were numerous studies showing it was going to be a $242+ billion cost to begin with on the economy, and it was going to wreak havoc in the coal industry, in our steel industry, a lot of manufacturing operations, things that there's been a recent resurgence. So getting out of the Paris Climate Accord was an easy decision because the bottom line, it made it easier to invest in China than in the United States. And when you export American jobs to places like China and India, what you actually do is import pollution, and that creates a whole host of other problems. So the president was right, one, to prioritize that decision, and then to make the decision that he did to get out.
Yeah, well, Democrats don't agree with him on that, of course, but they don't agree on much with him. The reality in this country, though, is that we have been paying attention to the environment for a long time. And over the course of many years now, the United States water and air quality has actually improved. We are doing things the right way in the United States versus places like China and India, who really, Mandy, are the real problem out there, are they not?
They are. You're exactly right. China and India are building coal plants where they don't use basic pollution control technology that our coal operators have been using for decades.
Right.
And that's why when you export our jobs, we import their pollution. And so keeping jobs here is really important. We have the cleanest air on record. Since 1970, we call them the 6 criteria pollutants, but bad things you don't want in the air like nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, those have been reduced by 73%.
Wow.
Right here in the United States because of the good environmental policies that we've been doing, and all of those trends will continue under President Trump. And you're right to point out water, too. There were problems in the last administration. Everyone remembers Flint, Michigan.
Right.
Well, part of that's because the last administration's EPA ignored tangible issues today because they wanted to make EPA the agency of climate change and only look to the future. What President Trump said was, no, let's focus on the issues that are impacting Americans today and let's improve their standing. And so on the water side, we're investing billions of dollars to ensure that something like Flint, Michigan doesn't happen again.
Yeah, thank goodness. No, what a disaster that was. Now, as we are looking towards 2020, we hear the Democrats specifically talk about climate change. There's so much talk about it. Governor Inslee actually captured the thinking of most candidates. Let's take a look at what he said.
We are the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we are the last that can do something about it. Our towns are burning. Our fields are flooding. Miami is inundated. And we have to understand this is a climate crisis, an emergency. And it is our last chance in the administration, next one, to do something about it.
All right, Mandy, what do you think? Are most Americans in agreement with that?
No, I think most Americans are a lot more sensible than Governor Inslee or any of the Democrat candidates that are on stage trying to kowtow to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are trying to scare the American people by citing frivolous science in terms of climate change. they need to scare the American people to make their socialist agenda seem reasonable. And so they're creating this false picture that isn't reality. And real Americans understand that because they look around and they see they see blue skies, they see clean air, and they have a job. And they know that it's easier to have a job, have their children get a job, fill up gas in their car, and go to the store and buy affordable groceries. And that's what Americans care about.
Yeah, and the reality is, even going back to, I think, like the 70s, people back then were saying that by this point in time, literally, like the world was going to be destroyed. People wouldn't be able to walk around without masks on. And here we are, thriving in 2019. We're at one of the cleanest points we've ever had in the history of this country. So it is a little crazy, I think, for most Americans to relate to this. We seem to be doing things the right way, and I agree with you. I think most people get it, and most people's priorities are not on climate change, although according to AOC, we have, 10, 12 years left?
I think it's 12 years.
12 years, guys. I mean, let's just, everybody get ready. So 2020 is very important because there is a chance that should one of these Democrats get in office, we could lose our footing as the major energy exporter. We are losing tons of jobs possibly if these people get their way. What is really at stake in 2020 as we look towards energy?
So I think in the energy space, the most is at stake because you have the Democrats going out there saying they not only want to stop production here in the United States, but that'll stop our ability to export our freedom fuel, as the Department of Energy calls it, to places that are in serious need, like our allies all over the country. So there's major problems in terms of what we can share and create in terms of geopolitical stability, but also the jobs. They want to destroy the entire fossil fuel industry. And back to what we started on, these are communities all over the country where people are proud to have the jobs where they fuel this great country. Yeah. And the Democrats want to completely destroy that. So when it comes to energy, I don't think that there's any more policy space where there is such a stark choice. You have the destroy it all Democrats versus let's grow and celebrate America's success under President Trump. And I think the voters know that, they'll understand that, and that's going to lend itself to the outcome we all want in 2020.
Well, the outcome we want is 4 more years of Donald Trump, so we will certainly hope for that. Mandy, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for all of your great work in this field.
All right, thank you so much.
In the 2020 campaign for president, the Democrats will choose radical environmental policies, while President Trump will choose jobs, American energy, and a cleaner environment. That's the real news for today. I'm Laura Trump from Studio 45 at Trump Tower in New York City. Thanks for joining us, everybody.